Yo, yo, yo! Welcome back, guys. Today we have another video. And we are going back to something that I did say I would do every 6 months. Or if there was a significant change. So, I do think that the metagame has changed a lot previously in the last 6 months. But, however, I didn't manage to get this out in the first 6 months because at about that time, there were 3 sets coming out in short concession. So I didn't want to then make another one within 3 months after that. So basically, what we're doing today is we are ranking or doing a tier list for every, I think I've covered a very, very wide range of decks. I have covered a lot of decks that aren't even playable anymore. I have covered a lot of decks which are very playable. I've even went as far as cover different variations on a lot of well-known decks. And the reason that is because this channel here is the one-stop shop for all your tier ranking needs, basically. You need to know how good a deck is, you come here. You need to tell me how bad your friend's deck is, you come here. And I am the place to be to tell you so. Don't know why, because I can't win jack shit, and I'm terrible at Magic. But I'd like to think I know the metagame. So let's see what you guys think of my thoughts. And we might even have it as a talking point on Casting Commons of how good or bad my tier list is. That is for sure. So yeah, without further ado, let's dive right in. We're not even going to shout anything out. We're just going to dive straight in. But check out Casting Commons though.
It's Pauper time.
So guys, here is the tier list. As you can see, there's a lot of decks on there. Some are covered by my green screened head, but they move over as we go along. You might be able to see the writings. Some of them are covered, some of them aren't. As it was recommended that we do put the text on so you can basically tell what the deck is, because some of the images were not as clear. So I try to do that as best I can, and that basically meant going into Paint and hand typing every single image was great. The things that I do for content. Also, that probably just shows how much of a boomer I am when it comes to technology. But here we are. So, we're just going to start all the way from left to right and not even start with the best deck or anything like that. So, we have got a few variations of different decks. You know, as you can see here, there is Kiln Fiend, there's Kuldotha Red, there's even Mono Red 1-drops. There's also Sticker Red as different red version. There's also Pinger Burn too as a different red variation. We also have Esper Glitters, Blue-White Glitters, and Jeskai Glitters. So there's Blue-White, there's Esper, and Jeskai is over here. So you will have to bear with obviously some of the text, but it is... hopefully you should get the gist, basically. So, let's dive right in. So, we have a 4-color Gates deck. This is kind of the Gate Creeper Vine build. So, you get Abzan builds, you get Naya builds. They all fairly play very, very similar, even though they have different colors in. That obviously does not include Colgate, but it is basically there's Band, there's Naya, there's Abzan, all dotted around. Some of them are all 3 colors, some of them are 4 colors, some of them, they're just gate piles. So that's kind of where we're starting. And I don't want to say these are trash, because they're not. They are not trash at all. I'd say they're probably like tier 3. Probably is where I put it, because when you see trash, it'll kind of make sense of where this is at. Also, again, there is certain variations of the decks that I have on here. So, like Infect, which is based on Magic Online Infect, not the paper Infect with the stickers, because it's hard to really gauge how good that is when there's very few results telling us so. So, that's basically where I've got to kind of put stuff like that. So, the reason I say this is because Ultratron is next. Ultratron is obviously I think it's a great deck, and Pauper again generally shows us how good that is. So I'm kind of thinking it's probably well positioned as well, but it's really hard to gauge because Magic Online's really hard to kind of pilot well, and there's only one absolute maniac, maybe two, that can kind of pilot this well. So I'm kind of putting it in like tier 2.5, which is the can steal a challenge kind of. It can definitely get there. It just needs a good, strong pilot, especially on Magic Online. Bogles. Bogles is a deck that I think's pretty strong right now. Ultimately, I think it can definitely... It's above can steal a challenge because it definitely can. I'm almost tempted to put it in tier 1, if I'm honest. If not tier 2. I think I will change these around as I'm going along, as I'm thinking, as more decks get up there. But I'm thinking Bogles is basically going to be tier 1 right now. I think it's pretty strong. It's not broken, but it's definitely a contender. No, I'm going to put it... No, it's definitely a contender. Oh, and I probably... Yeah, it's somewhere between here, as I say. I'll change this as I'm going along. It is definitely a strong deck right now. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm going to put it. Boros Initiative. So this is the deck that just recently did well in the challenge. It's a Snapbolt pile, Wildfire deck with Goliath Paladin, Ephemerates, Inspiring Overseers, all that sort of stuff. I'm going to put it in Steal a Challenge. I think it's actually I think mid-range piles are actually quite good. But ultimately, it's kind of where I think it is. Yeah, that's all I've got to say about that one. Boros Synth. I'd probably put this in tier 3. Above, maybe, I'll put it in Can Steal a Challenge because it definitely shows up a lot. It's definitely strong. Its engine's very, very powerful. But yeah, it's kind of there-ish. Black White Ephemerate, as much as it's, I don't know why I've missed Rakdos Madness here, but we're just going wild. We're just going all over. Yeah, I think Black White Ephemerate's a deck that's similar to Boros Initiative in the sense that it could do really well. It could steal a challenge. But ultimately, I think at the moment, it's probably like a mid-range pile and it's very tier 3. Do you know what? I'm going to put Boros Initiative there as well. Yeah, and I think also, guys, another thing that I noticed on the last one was very much that you could tell people I was changing stuff around as I was going, and people were like commenting, oh my god, how did you put this? Once I've obviously talked, it seemed more up there. I eventually changed my mind because two decks like are very comparable together, so it's nice to see where you put stuff. So, like Boros Synth is probably just below. He's like below Bogles is a very playable deck. So, but I think unless I do this, that's the only thing because I want to show the difference between these. So that's kind of where I'm going. So we might put Bogles back up there, but ultimately I don't think so. Anyways, Rakdos Madness goes straight in the trash pile. It is doggy doo-doo. We got our first one. I think the deck's bad. I could see it being here. I just think the deck's bad. Like, now that Burn's not a real thing, like old school Burn. So it kind of gets worse, is the best way I can describe it. Its usefulness was the fact that you could use the drawing cards while burning the opponent to kind of leverage against Burn, but Burn's now in a different league compared to Madness, and Madness is still just stuck here. Corgate, very easy tier 1. I don't think it's quite S tier, because I don't think it's quite OP broken, because it is definitely strong. But ultimately, yeah, I think it's definitely tier 1. It's definitely up there as one of the better decks in the format. Cycle Storm, as much as I'd like to say it can steal a challenge and it does appear around that time, it is definitely, I would say, doggy doo-doo. It's definitely poo. Rubbish, shit, whatever you want to call it. It's trash. Yeah, it just folds so much in this current metagame to all the hate that all the other decks get, really. Which should become apparent. Elves. Elves. I want to put this in Can Steal a Challenge. I think in this particular moment, against Sticker Goblin sort of finding its feet on Magic Online and being the more prevalent version of like red, I would say. My conclusion is I think it can definitely steal challenges more because fumes and end of festivities, all that sort of hate is kind of at a minimal, and you can kind of work around someone that's just kind of scraping on by with that sort of hate. And I do think it, and the removals on an all-time low, like terrors on mono blue, you know, you got snap and all that sort of stuff. So I do think it can definitely steal a challenge. So I wouldn't like forget it. Yeah, that's kind of where I put this. Esper Glitters. As much as I do think Glitters is a strong deck, I think Esper Glitters is definitely one of the weaker ones. I'd probably put it like top end of tier 3. It definitely doesn't feel like it could steal a challenge because it's so clunky and, you know, reverse engineers just not it and things like that. I think it has a lot of problems which are fixed by playing blue-white Glitters. So yeah, that's kind of my first thought on that. Blue-white Familiars. A deck that was probably almighty S tier at some point. And I definitely don't think it is. I'd probably put it at... I'd say it's a weird one because not many people pilot it. So I'd probably put it at like lower end of can steal a challenge. I think you have to be really good in this current format to play. Actually, I'm going to put it top 2, tier 3. Because I'd like to show how like this deck is good. Don't get me wrong, it is strong. If the right pilot's playing it. But you need to play so tight in this current format that with Familiars that I don't think it's very forgiving. So ultimately, I think that, and also you've got it like has a lot of splash here, like the relics and stuff like that. It does kind of hurt it a lot. Other removal heavy kind of gardensy kind of decks do also like help it get worse, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's just a lot of things that need to go right for it to be good, I guess. But I'd definitely pick it. I feel like I have to. I think I'm gonna put it up here actually, slightly, because I'd pick this. So if I was to look at these 5 decks, I'd pick Familiars before I picked any of these. If I was wanting to do well, I'd probably pick Familiars before I want to pick any of these. Because even though I'd probably end up personally probably playing Black, White, Ephemerate or Boros Initiative because that's the kind of deck I play towards. Out of actual winning, I think probably Blue-White Familiars is probably better there. So I think I'd like to put it there, I guess. It can definitely steal a challenge, but it does definitely need a good pilot and a good sort of fast player. Flickertron. I think the format's just too fast for it. I think it's annoying to play against and it's quite time intensive and stuff like that. That I do think it's probably tier 3 / can steal a challenge-ish. But ultimately, I don't think it's that great. That's kind of where I'm going to put that, I would say. Food. So, the food deck is basically, there's 2 decks going around. There's a Food Gates deck, which is like Abzani colours using Lembas, using Golden Egg, using Ginger Brute, Guardian of the Guildpact, all that sort of stuff. Even in paper, it has like a sticker variation. Then I've also combined that with like the Jund food deck, which is a deck that kind of appears here and there. It kind of like 5-0'd a few times, which is like a Quirion Ranger, Gingerbread Captain, is it called? Kind of engine to gain a lot of food, Deadly Dispute, Makeshift Munitions, all that sort of stuff. Again, it definitely is playable, and I'd probably put them in the bottom end of like tier 3. If not top end of like absolute doo-doo, but they are pretty okay. Because I've jammed them together, so I'd like to say that they are playable, but it's definitely on the lower end of playable. I also do think the deck gets incredibly... Like, if I was to include paper, really, like stickers, I'd actually probably put it like top end of here. I do think the deck's quite strong as soon as you include stickers and it gains the access to the combo. It gets like cool things like giving Makeshift Munitions Death Touch, can give stuff lifelink, you can change the power and toughness of Cauldron Familiar. You've got a value engine in the like sack a permanent, draw 2 cards. Like it gains a lot from the deck from just being stickers. So, but ultimately without it, I kind of want to put it at the low end of tier 3. I think that does push it up though. Golgari Gardens. So last time I did this, Gardens was a meme, and it was one of my favourite decks of all time, and I probably put it low end of tier 3. I think it was. But yeah, I think I'm probably putting this up here. Like, I'd definitely say it's probably tier 1. It's part of the metagame, I would say, solidly. Like, it's solidified its space in the metagame. And I'd say I would also argue it's probably fighting the place for the... I want to say third best deck in terms of if a bunch of these archetypes together, I'd probably put it in. It's fighting for third, along with like 3 other decks. So, which is another thing why it makes the PFP decisions quite hard, because there is quite a lot of diverse decks in the top spot. Grixis Affinity. So I believe at the time I put this as S tier when we first started. So this is just a tier 2 deck now. It's like, it's borderline tier 2, tier 1, basically. Yeah, I probably should have put Mare Enforcer as that image, but not that it really matters. Grixis Affinity is Grixis Affinity. It's a strong deck. I think other decks have kind of took its mantle in that slot. Definitely. I do think in the space of a month, maybe, I could easily see this changing around with the other artifact deck, for sure. But yeah, I think Grixis Affinity is definitely a solid tier 2. If not, I think it's just pipped out of tier 1 based on the other decks that are there. But yeah, hopefully that should come more clear. I would say that's kind of where I would put that. Heroic. Moving on to Heroic, I think it's pretty much similar to Bogle's. It is a solid tier 2 deck. It's definitely a contender to, you have to probably think you may versus maybe at least once in a 7-round event, I would say. At least this sort of archetype, Bogle's or Heroic, I definitely would sort of prepare to at least see it. Glitters is really giving that strength to kind of compete with these other decks. Yeah. So fairly straightforward. I do think obviously the white side, like all these white cards, white sideboard cards, you've got prismatic strands as well. You've got all this lifelink stuff, Spirit Link and lifelink, there's a lot of good tools that, and all that glitters obviously just makes the clock infinitely faster. So yeah, fairly straightforward. Infect, I do think Infect is just currently, it's similar to Food, so this is the non-sticker version without command performance. I do think it's just not good. Just don't play any variation of Infect online at all. Like, you're not playing Gates, you're not playing the blue-green Gates, you're not playing the mono-green Infect, you're not playing any of them. It just doesn't work. I do think I'd probably, again, it's hard to really justify based on how much exposure it gets, but I'd probably put this into like Can Steal a Challenge, somewhere around the Boros Synth mark with stickers. I do think it does gain quite a lot from the sticker side. The 2-mana command performance stuff kind of like helps it out a lot. It can, change the power and toughness, can make it not die to bolts. It can be protection. It's got a lot of different game. You can give it menace. You do all sorts of different stuff with them, with the stickers. So I definitely would probably put it a lot further up. And I think those two are the only two, I think, with stickers. Actual stickers that would go up. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking. Jeskai Glitters. So this is like the Kirby version with the Witching Well, with Reverse Engineer, Sabo Cryptomancer, or whatever it's called. I think this is kind of below Flickertron, but again, I think it's above Esper Glitters, but I do think it doesn't get enough exposures to justify that, and that's my personal opinion playing the deck. From playing, I'd say apart from like Boros Initiative, and obviously I haven't really played Infect, I'm not going to lie to you. No one touches that deck with a barge pole. I probably have played all these to come my own conclusion that I think Jeskai Glitters it's probably worse than Flickertron, hence why it's there. But I do think it has a lot more game than Esper Glitters. I could see Esper Glitters going down to the trash, the poop emoji pile. Jeskai Wildfire, this is like Jeskai Wildfire, Jeskai Ephemerate, whatever you would like to call it. Yeah, this deck it makes results. It used to at one point definitely have one in every top 8 just because it could, and there was only like 2 pilots. But I think it's probably down here now. It's probably on par with like familiars, I think. I think Wildfire has a bit more game against like the Gardens piles, but I do think ultimately it's definitely on Stealer Challenge, I would say. That's probably where I'd put it. Jund Wildfire, again, whichever list, there's either the Wildfire ones that are spell heavy, there's the Wildfire ones which are like Visionary, Cerulean Packmate kind of piles. Deck is bad. Deck is just bad. Too slow, too clunky, too everything. I'd actually say it's probably the worst deck out of these. Yeah, I'd probably put it like this. I actually maybe put it above Infect, but I'm not really sure. They're both probably equally as bad. If I'm putting elves in Constealer Challenge, gotta put the Kiln Fiend there too. Occasionally we see elves keep making random appearances here and there. Same with Kiln Fiend. They just kind of go under what the S tier decks are trying to do, and kind of hopefully that takes away with it. Fairly straightforward stuff. So now we're into the fun piles. So Kuldotha Red. This is the version that Reese won the Northern Pauper Open with. It's like the 5 impulse kind of Galv Blast, Lava Darts, Fire Blasty piles, not the sticker version. But again, all run very similar cards. They are very, very niche. Ultimately, I don't even know why I split them, because, spoiler, Kuldotha Red is S tier. There's no argument that it's anything else. We've been saying on Casting Commons for a long time that Kuldotha Red is probably better than stickers. It just takes a while for them to realise how bad Sticker Goblin is. But ultimately, I do think it is S tier. And it's just a small variation on them. Mardu Synth, as much as I was hyped on this deck when I did this 6 months ago, deck's just pretty bad. Not that great. It's a bit clunky. Well, not even clunky. It's just a bit, it does nothing. Like, if the meta's like Corgate and Garden, sure, you could maybe get away with it. Terror it would struggle against. It's got 4 chainers, but even still, like, it's removals, outdated, stuff like that. So yeah. Mono Black Devotion. A deck that I feel like I have to have on here, because Reddit will absolutely explode. But it's on here. And as much as people like to think it's S tier, because, you know, they're still living in 2012, it's pretty bad. I actually probably put it really bad, to be fair. Witches doesn't do anything. You've got your chainers, you've got your snuff out, you've got your cast downs, you've got an outdated draw engine to Gardens, and then you're running these whacked creatures like Chittering Rats and Gary and, you know, all that sort of stuff. Definitely not it. Mogwarts, I actually think this is probably the best Canstealer Challenge deck, I would say, out of these piles. I think Mogwarts is probably one of the better decks that just doesn't get enough love. You just occasionally get like Hamuda rocking it, and it's like, wait, look at me, I came third in the challenge. And then it disappears again, because no one wants to pick it up. The deck's strong. The deck can fight through a lot of like Relic hate or Graveyard hate, and it can definitely beat that, no issues whatsoever. It's got different ways of winning. So like, if their game plan is I'm going to keep a janky hand with a Relic, it's all good. You can just amass a board of first day of class Skirk Prospectors and Goblin Matrons and go from there. Like, it definitely can fight through a lot of interaction. I would probably put it, if people actually played Mogwarts a lot, I'd probably put it tier 2, to be honest. Like, I'd probably say it's on par with Bogles. It just doesn't get any love, so therefore it doesn't put results. I'm also not the best pilot to be saying this, but that's just my personal opinion. Blackburn is like the Mono Black Burn deck. Is equally as good as Rakdos Madness and Mono Black Devotion. It is a similar style deck. It's just, these decks have just, the big thing that's happened to them is they've just not got anything new. Like, obviously, Jump Wildfire got Cleanse and Wildfire and Bridges and all that sort of stuff, but then it's just got nothing. Like, it's just a worse Ponza. It's just, you know, it doesn't do anything. There is like a Jund Ponza, which is effectively Splash and Troll and Snuff Out, but other than that, it's like red-green. That's the closest thing you get into Jund Ramp, is that kind of build. And I think that's probably the best bet you've got. So I would recommend checking that out. But other than that, it's kind of just Ponza. Other than that, it like literally runs land destruction and things. Anyways, we are on Mono Blue Fair. This was a deck that was strong tier 2, I think, or if not strong tier 1 when I did this 9 months ago. And now I am so pleased. Like, I honestly, this is the reason why I want to do this. I am so happy. Mono Blue Fair is... I actually want to put it here because it is awful. But I kind of probably think I have to put it here. The fact that you can play Elves and Kiln Fiend over Mono Blue Fair, I would say, is a surprise. And I would actually agree with like that choice, that is probably where I'd put that. I would pick Kiln Fiend over Mono Blue Fair at the moment. I just don't think Fair can survive with all the expensive spells that's going around. You've got all the mid-range piles which can outclass and outdraw them. Mono Blue Fair just can't keep up. The more, what's the word? Like, the cheaper the format, like, in terms of how cheap all the cards are, the better spell stutter gets. And that's kind of all it is. Like, the deck with the cheap spells is Kuldotha, or some sort of red deck. And even that, you just don't have enough spell stutter or speed to keep up. You just get swifted, you just get pyroblasted, you just get bolted left, right, and center. It's just not good. So yeah, I'm happy to say it's tier 3. I'd probably even potentially put it lower down in this like tier 3 pile. But yeah, ultimately, I don't want the Fair people to shower me. And even the new Spell Snare, is it? Or Spell Snare Master or whatever. Just isn't really doing it any favours. Mono Green Stompy. A deck that probably hasn't got any new toys since I started playing. Deck is bad. I'd probably put it above like these random piles, but it's worse than Cycle Storm and it's worse than Rakdos Madness, I would say. Mono Red 1-drops. Moving on because there's not much to talk about Mono Green Stompy. Mono Red 1-drops is a variation on Kuldotha. It doesn't run any Reckless Impulses. It runs Lotus Petal and it goes super low to the ground. That basically, I think everything in the main deck costs 1. Don't think it runs Fire Blasts either from memory. And it runs like 2 Flare and Pains. Is the only non-1-drop in the deck. Running Blast Runner, things like that. Again, it's a small... I don't say a small variation because it is a variation on red. I do think that it is still S tier though. The deck is strong with Lotus Petals in or not. It is definitely a strong deck. Swifty hard carries this deck. I don't think this deck would exist without Swift Spears. But yeah, definitely S tier. Moving on, Mono Blue Terror. A deck that when I did this 9 months ago, I don't know why I keep saying 6 months, was not a deck. It was a meme. I don't think, yeah, it was a deck. It was a deck, I think, but it was a meme. I didn't include it in the tier list though. Mono Blue Terror, here we are. It's now even stole the Terror symbol, like the picture, because Mono Blue Terror is the better Terror deck, and that is fairly easy. Again, another S tier deck. It flickers around between the two. They are very rotating on which deck you want to aim to beat, but ultimately I think Mono Blue Terror is definitely a S tier deck. Nothing else to say about that. I don't think we're going to get any arguments on that either, but here we are. Monstertron is all I got to say about that. As much as I do love the deck is definitely how you should play Tron because it's fun. There's nothing better than just hard casting big, dumb dudes. Well, actually, there is. There is, you know, the reason it's wrong is because it's an awful thing to do. Because with all that mana, you can do so many more broken things like flicker everything, like Mer Retriever looping and all that sort of good stuff. So this one might be controversial. Maybe. I'm not really sure. This is Pinger Burns. So for those that don't know, it's like the 8 Reckless Impulse kind of Thermo Alchemist, Kessig Flame Breather decks that kind of look to keep chaining through the deck while pinging them with all that sort of stuff. Still runs Monastery Swift Spear. But ultimately, I actually think this isn't the deck. It's like the worst version of Mono Red. and I'd probably put it here. Like, that's a big jump. It's just, yeah, I'd actually potentially put it like 2.5, to be honest. I don't think the deck's it. It's strong. It's got the natural red carry cards. You know, you've got your impulses, you've got your Monastery Swift Spear, you've got your lightning bolts, your chain lightnings, your all that sort of stuff, your synthesizers, all your powerful red cards you grow, you know, that are in here, but ultimately, I just don't think it's it. I personally think it's a worse choice than Bogle's Heroic Angric Symphony. Maybe it's a worse choice than Mugwort as well. I'm not really sure. But yeah, ultimately, that's kind of where I'll put it. Poison Storm. I love this deck. And I love the fact that it's here. Obviously, when I did this, last time, it was not a deck. Obviously, the deck became a thing with All Will Be One. And yeah, this deck's great. Using depletion lands to obviously get a lot of mana and then proliferate them to keep them around and all that sort of good stuff. I do think, however, it's okayly positioned. Like, it can still do stuff, but it's very inconsistent in what it's good against. Like, I don't think it's very good against Kuldotha or like the red decks. So I would actually pick this deck over Fairies, to be honest. So I kind of want to put it here, but I'm not really sure. I'll settle on here. I will settle on here. Gruul Ponza. So Ponza has been a weird one. So before I did like the last video, it's kind of been like really strong in the middle, and I think it's gone back down again. I don't think it's a strong choice now. And that's just based on the fact that, like, Blue Terror, all the best decks are untapped mono-coloured decks. So that makes it a lot worse. It makes it strong, but it makes it a lot worse. I think it's a solid tier 2 is probably where I'd put it. That's basically all I can say about it, really. It's a strong deck that if you verse a lot of the tier 1 decks is probably where I'd put it. But ultimately, I just don't think it kind of gets there. Slivers. 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 I really like this deck. I really, really, really like Slivers. And I really want it to be good. But it's not it. I don't think it's the worst deck in the trash tier, kind of poop tier. But yeah, it's just the problem or the theme you might notice is that you've just got lack of support. Like, this got Boulder Branch Golem, which made it kind of like revisit it. But other than that, it's kind of not really a deck. Sticker Red. Sticker Red. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. So this one might be a bit controversial. I don't think Sticker Red's it. I think it's better than Pingerburn. It's worse than Kuldotha. I kind of want to put it here. This is my initial thought, is where I want to put it. I want to put it here. But I also think I have to give it some amount of credit that it's a little bit better than that. I kind of want to put it here. This is probably where I'll settle on it. It's tier 1. I get a strong version of Red, but I just ultimately do not think it's the best version of Red. I actually think it's a liability, to be honest. It's a very liability of like a card to include in your deck. If you remove it, you don't get the mana and all this sort of stuff. It just opens you up to so much more. And then, yeah, if a deck isn't prepared for it, you get to explode and go out there. But, like, let's be honest. In 2023, what deck is not prepared for mono red? Like, the deck's been the best deck since what? Well, December 2022 when I last did this, it was the best deck. And it was the best deck a few months before that as well. So it's easily been the past 18 months at least that it's been the best deck. So yeah. So in 18 months, if you are not prepared for red to the point where a Seethen Song on a stick gets you, you deserve to lose anyways, let's be honest. So, yeah. There you go. Sticker red. Tier 1, probably. Realistically, I'd like to think by the next time I do this, that it's probably off there completely. I just would like to think it's just not a variation. Like, all the Kuldotha decks will just swallow up the sticker decks, if you know what I mean. Because they're just not it, I don't think. But at the moment, it's definitely a deck you've got to consider. And it's probably tier 1-ish. Teachings. Goodbye. You are now unplayable. Unfortunately, that's all variations. That's Sultai Teachings. That's Esper Teachings. All these sort of control decks that try and kill them with Sprout Swarming. And is it Recruit the Worthy, the white card's called? Yeah, just not it. No new toys. Nothing exciting. Pauper's changed a lot since Teachings was a good card. And the closest you're getting is Flickertron, I think, which is tier 3. Yeah. Tribe. Tribe. I think it's probably the... nah, it's just bad. I was like, it's bottom tier 3. It's like sort of playable. No, I don't think it is. It's a clunky pile that's very all in. You've got to have a lot of things go right for that deck to do well. And even Lorien isn't carrying this deck, I don't think. So yeah. Tortex, again, a deck that hasn't got any new toys. Unfortunately, I just think it's poop. As much as I do enjoy playing Tortex, I think it's great fun to play. And I've noticed that a lot of these decks at the bottom, I do really like playing. I like playing Tortex. I like playing Tribe. I like playing Slivers. I like playing Jund Wildfire Piles. I like playing Monstertron. But yeah, these are just not it. Turbo Fog. Turbo Fog. I actually think this is probably like here. Again, a deck that not many people play because it's very time consuming on Magic Online. It's very boring to play. But I think it's very strong. When you look at the top of the metagame, you've got Kuldotha, you've got Terra, you've got Corgate, like you've even got Gardens, which doesn't interact with it very well. Like, your interaction is basically, I hope I play an initiative guy and kill you with it. So that's that. And I think Turbo Fog's probably a powerful deck. It's probably on par with Mogwarts in my eyes for a deck that can steal a challenge that should definitely be further up, but just doesn't get the love it deserves. Demir Fairies. This deck sucks. Boop. I think this is where it gets weird, because like I think Fairies is bad anyways. I think Mono Blue's probably better because you've got all the sideboard cards and all that sort of stuff, and your untapped lands, all that sort of stuff is quite good. But yeah, I just think that ultimately putting a second colour in Fair is pretty bad. Ultimately, I do think so. I think so anyways. And I'm probably going to say the same for Blue Red Fair, just to jump ahead a bit. We will cover the other two Terra decks at the same time as well, I guess. So Blue Black Terra, a deck that was all the way up at tier 1, I think, last time. It's definitely one of the best decks fighting for the top spot. I kind of want to put it here. Why aren't you moving? There we are. I'd say it's top of tier 3. I would say. That's kind of where I'm thinking. Like, it's a deck that kind of appears, but it's just not Mono Blue. Ain't it? And I don't really know why. The tap lands, the snuff outs, the stuff like that, it's so easy to just interact with. You just gain so much more interaction. Like, you get removal, sure, but you don't need removal when you're Mono Blue Terra. So that's why I think it's just a worse version of Mono Blue at the moment, unfortunately. Blue Green Ponza. A deck that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I do like Blue Green Ponza. I versed the weekend of Northern Pauper Open as well, and that was fun. I didn't realise Lorien Revealed's a good choice. Sweet choice now I think about it. But yeah, it's definitely just not there yet. It's got no new real toys. There's no reason to play it over Gruul, I don't think. But yeah, it's definitely fun. Definitely fun as far as Ponza can be fun. But yeah, Definitely there. Next one is Blue Red Terror. The one that's more like a control deck that runs like the monarchy stuff. Deck's okay. I'll probably put it up here. It's probably better than Poison Storm. It's really strange how I'm looking at this. So like I see imagine it like the can steal a challenge line as like this really weird outlier that they are pretty much tier 3, but they, depending on how the rotation of S tier and tier 1 and all that sort of stuff, depends on how much of each is seen, depends on which one like can get through. So say if 1 week there's a high number of mono blue terror, like elves can get through, for example. Where I don't think that's the case when Kiln Fiend, like with Kiln Fiend will struggle against the army of mono blue terror because they've got a lot of Bebs, they've got a lot of Hydro Blasts, they've got a lot of Snaps, a lot of way to interact. Again, Familiars struggles with those matchups to an extent, but then if Gardens is like big, then it'll take a downfall. But it can definitely like all, and that's kind of what I'm trying to say is like it all depends on. So, like, I feel like this is like a very much rotating thing that they can kind of go up and down, just, and they're completely meta dependent. Where ultimately, I think no matter which rotation of these 6 decks, these are kind of tier 3. If that makes sense. It's a hard one to gauge because it's all very opinionated and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's kind of how I'm trying to vision it for clarity for people. Like, it probably should be at the bottom of can steal a challenge kind of thing. Like, it's not great, but sometimes it can. Blue-White Glitters. So, as much as I would like Grixis Affinity to take its spot, I think this is just a better version of that. And I do think it's not S tier by any stretch. I do think it's tier 1. I do think these 2 decks are better than it. I think. I'm not really sure. But Glitters is definitely up there as one of the stronger decks. It's definitely one of the forces to be reckoned with. You know, you can enforce all your different tactics on it and all that sort of stuff. It's definitely a strong deck because, you know, all that Glitters is definitely a strong card. But yeah, ultimately, I think tier 1 is definitely there. And there's still 2 S tier decks, and that is effectively red and mono blue. Ultimately. Walls. So this is Walls Cascade, and this is Walls Combo. So I will put them. I'll put Walls Cascade as a tier 3 deck, and I'll put Walls Combo as a Can Steal a Challenge deck. Even though they are very similar, they play totally different. The fact that this can put an early amount of pressure on really helps with certain matchups. But I do think Walls Combo generally has the advantage because of the way the format is with interaction. Again, if Gardens is on the low, then it can get through counterspells and the odd bolt and stuff like that kind of thing. It all depends on what's low, what's high, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, ultimately that's kind of what I'm thinking. Walls Combo is definitely up there, similar to Blue-White Familiars. And then White Weenie, a deck that is, I would put it solidly tier 2. Yeah. The deck just keeps overperforming and is probably the outlier. I know it sounds strange, the outlier to the poop tier. Because it's basically got no real new cards for such a long time. And it's very honest and fair. Yet the position that it's in right now is just hard carried by Prismatic Strands. And it's just great to see. So yeah. Deck is strong. So, let's take a quick look at this. So, Mono Red 1-drops and Kuldotha Red are S tier. Yeah, I think that's right, because basically, Mono Red 1-drops is just a small variation on Kuldotha. I do think Kuldotha's better. If I'm putting them in like an order that matters, it's definitely this. But yeah, I think ultimately they are very strong decks. They are S tier decks. Sticker Red, I like to note that I don't think Stickers is it. So it's definitely a tier down to Kuldotha or Kuldotha variations. Blue-White Glitters is definitely fighting for the top spot. So is Corgate and so is Gardens. And I think those are the 3 decks that ultimately kind of rotate. That are fighting for that 3rd kind of rock, paper, scissors metagame. Is that those 3 decks kind of rotate in that sort of instance. After that, we have Ponza, we have Affinity, we have Bogle's Heroic, and White Weenie, effectively. I will put White Weenie better than Pingerburn for sure. Pingerburn is the worst variation of red. It's just not good. But it's still got the power of red tools, so it has to be pretty high up there. Mogwarts, Turbofog, Boros Synth, Ultratron, Jeskai Wildfire or Ephemerate. Blue-Eye Familiars, Walls Combo, Elves, and Kiln Fiend are definitely decks that can steal challenges. They just appear, they disappear, they appear, they disappear. Perfect example of those sort of decks that can just steal challenges out of nowhere. For sure. Blue-Black Terror, Blue-Red Terror, definitely worse versions of Terror to the point where I wouldn't even register them. I don't think they're very good. Walls Cascade, again, another combo, another Walls deck, but I don't think it's as good. It needs to attack to kill the opponent. It does have powers against like initiative and things like that. It makes it better against things like Corgate and Gardens because it's very initiative based. But ultimately, I don't think it's a great choice, especially compared to combo Walls. Poison Storm, probably thinking this higher than I need to. But again, I do think the deck has a great game against the metagame. With Weather the Storm, with Moment's Peace, all that sort of stuff, it can definitely do reasonably well. So it's definitely high tier 3, I would like to think. Mono Blue Fair, not the greatest of choices right now, but is solidly in the metagame, so therefore is a tier 3 option. Flickertron, sure, it's a deck that some people pilot and some people do well against. It's definitely a contender, something you've got to consider, but it's definitely not the greatest. I wouldn't have a sideboard slot for Flickertron, for example. Jeskai Glitters and Esper Glitters are definitely the worst versions of Glitters, but I do think Jeskai Glitters slightly pips the pause personally, but I actually think Jeskai Glitters can steal a challenge / tier 2 if people actually spent the time refining it, because I do think the red adds a lot. The gate piles are definitely there, again with the other mid-range piles of tier 3 of Black, White, Ephemerate and Boros Initiative. Food, again, is on that list because it is a gate deck and also a mid-range pile if you're playing the Jun Food too. And finally, the ones that upsets everyone is the poop tier, which is Blue-Red Fair, Demir Fair, Cycle Storm, Tribe Combo, Rakdos Madness, Mono Green, Stompy, Slivers, Mardu Synth, Blue-Green Ponza, Tortex, Infect, Jund Wildfire, Blackburn, Teachings, Mono Black Devotions, and Monstertron. All decks that are, unfortunately, haven't got enough toys, haven't got any new exciting things, and just cannot keep up with the metagame. So yeah, that's kind of my tier list. This is the one-stop shop for all of your tier list needs. Please do not forget to like and subscribe on this video, and I'll be doing them hopefully every 6 to 9 months, depending on how the metagame changes. If we get bannings and unbannings, I'll probably do one in a couple of months, like a month or so after that. So, yeah. Please let me know what your thoughts are on this tier list. You can follow me on Twitter at TeasdaleMTG and just literally comment on this tier list video and just say what you think, what I got wrong, what you disagree with, all that sort of stuff. But these are my personal opinions. There you go. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time. Peace!